Here's what I've learned. Software can't replace sense. I'm Walter Finch. For 42 years, I was head accountant. You see, numbers on a screen can hide what ink on paper refuses to forget. The truth is, when they forced me out, they didn't just lose me, they lost the entire system. I built that company's financial nervous system by hand. You see, back then, there was no enter key. There was just you, a sharp pencil, and a column of figures that had to agree. My ledger wasn't software, it was a story. Every invoice, every payroll, every capital expenditure. It was a line in a 42-year narrative. I knew the rhythm of it. I could feel a discrepancy before I saw it, the way a sailor feels a shift in the wind. My Helen, she used to watch me work on Sundays sometimes. She'd bring me a cup of tea and just sit with me. One afternoon she said, "Walter, you're the best gardener this company will ever have. But remember, a wise man builds a garden he can leave, not just a plot he has to tend forever." I didn't fully understand her then. I thought my value was in being the only one who knew where all the roots were buried. Then Cynthia Vance arrived, 41 years old, the new CFO. She called a modernization summit in the third-floor conference room. The coffee was getting cold in the carafe. She had these sleek presentations, graphs that danced. She talked about cloud integration, real-time analytics, and streamlining legacy processes. She looked right at me and said, with a smile that didn't touch her eyes, that it was time to unshackle our human capital from manual, repetitive tasks. That I had built a wonderful monument, but monuments are for looking at, not for running a modern enterprise. She didn't see a nervous system. She saw an appendix, something to be neatly removed. My retirement wasn't forced, not on paper. It was a gentle, persistent nudge toward the cliff, a generous package, a celebration of my institutional knowledge. They gave me a gold watch that weighed a ton. On my last day, I cleaned out my desk. It didn't take long. I took my ledger, that was mine, I'd bought the book myself, and my favorite pen, a Cross Townsend that Helen gave me for our 25th anniversary. The click of my office door locking behind me was the quietest sound I'd ever heard. For the first few weeks, I just sat. The house was too quiet. Then I saw a flyer at the library. The community center was looking for someone to teach a basic bookkeeping class for small business owners. I figured, why not? The first class had 6 people: a woman who ran a bakery, a young man with a bicycle repair shop, a couple trying to make their antique store work. They weren't worried about cloud integration. They were worried about knowing if they'd made any money at the end of the month. I started with the basics: a single ledger sheet, income on the left, expenses on the right. The magic happens in the middle, where you find the story. I taught them to feel the numbers, not just read them. 6 months to the day after I left, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but the area code was from the old office. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again, and again. Finally, I listened. It was Cynthia Vance. Her voice was different, tight. The polished confidence was gone. She said there was an urgent matter, a critical audit from the parent company. Could she come see me? Just to talk. She sat right where you're imagining her sitting, on the edge of the armchair. Her hands were clasped so tight her knuckles were white. She didn't even compliment the house. She just started talking. The new system, the beautiful, automated, cloud-based system,
It had a problem. A $2.3 million problem. Transactions that didn't reconcile. Payments that couldn't be traced.
The audit team was circling, and the software logs were, she called it, inconclusive. The software had no memory. It only knew what it was told to know. And somewhere in the migration, in the streamlining, a decimal point had gone wandering, and $2,300,000 had simply evaporated from the trail. Here's the part that haunts me. She looked at my old cloth-bound ledger, sitting there on the coffee table where I'd been reviewing it. She pointed at it. Her finger was shaking. "That," she said. Does it have the vendor codes from fiscal 2018? Because our digital archive only has them from 2020 onward. The old servers were decommissioned." I just looked at her. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I watched the realization dawn in her eyes. The only complete map, from day one to my last day, was written in ink, in my handwriting. Then she made the offer. Consultant, triple my old salary, a private office, an assistant, full authority to untangle the mess. She said the word legacy 3 times. She talked about respect, about making things right. It was a lot of money, more than I would ever need. For a moment, I saw the path, the triumphant return, the old savior with his paper Bible. And then I heard Helen's voice, clear as if she were in the next room. "Build a garden you can leave, Walter." I looked back at Cynthia. Her desperation was a cold thing. It wasn't about me. It wasn't about my knowledge. It was about a fire she needed me to put out, a temporary fix. I thought about my class at the community center, about Sarah from the bakery, who just proudly shown me her first accurate profit and loss statement, about the young bike mechanic who'd caught a supplier overcharging him by 15% because he'd learned to check his ledger. I told her no, gently. I said, "Cynthia, you don't need a consultant. You need a time machine. You traded a living memory for a tool that has no memory at all. That $2.3 million hole? My ledger could probably find the thread to start pulling, but fixing it would take me 6 months of my life. And when I was done, you'd have your answer, and I'd be obsolete again. You'd fire the software, but you'd fire me too. Just more politely this time." She stared at me. She hadn't expected a philosophy lesson. She'd expected a price. I said, "My value isn't in my head anymore. It's in their heads." And I pointed, not toward the town, but in the general direction of the community center. "I'm building a different kind of ledger now. One they can't delete. One they can't force into retirement." She stood up, slowly. She didn't have an argument for that. She just nodded, a quiet, defeated little motion, and let herself out. I heard through the grapevine later. The audit, it wasn't good. Fines, restatements. Cynthia pursued other opportunities not long after. The company limped along, but the trust was broken. And me? I teach my class every Tuesday. Sarah the baker opened a second location. The bike shop kid just hired his first employee. They send me Christmas cards. They call sometimes for the question. They're my ledger now. Living, breathing entries in a balance sheet that actually matters. Here's what I've learned. Value isn't what you hold hostage. It's what you give away that grows. They couldn't balance their books because they forgot that the most important column isn't assets or liabilities. It's people. And that's a number their software will never,
ever understand.
Here's what I've learned. Knowledge locked in a server is a liability. Knowledge shared is a legacy. If you're feeling obsolete, remember your value isn't in the system you master, but in the wisdom you plant in others. There's always a second act, a chance to build something that lasts beyond any corporate ladder. If this story resonated with you, I'd recommend 2 books. First, The Second Mountain by David Brooks. It's about finding purpose by committing to others, not just career success. And The Richest Man in Babylon by George Clason, timeless parables on building wealth and wisdom that endure. You'll find the links in the description below. Thank you for listening. If this helped, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Take care of yourselves.